Welcome back to the Iron Sights podcast. I'm here with my buddy Matt Greene. Matt, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm stoked we got Matt down here. I say this pretty much every time we do one of these episodes. I'm going to say it again. The fitness industry has just blessed me so much with running into some just amazing people, and you and I crossed paths. It's going to be probably almost 3 years ago now, just right here in the lobby or on the floor here. We had an event. We invited a lot of our friends. It kind of started like, let's just reach out to the people we know socially that are locally and get them in here. And God, we were blessed to have you come by, and we met, and ever since.
Yeah, that was a super smart event. Like because not a lot of people bring like the community together and like really allow others to meet each other, and everybody's in their little boxes, and so it was a really smart idea to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that was the whole point. We built this place to create that level of community, and I mean, this is just one example of how that can work. We were doing, felt like we were doing a really great job of that for a while, and then we had to take a little pause with being shut down. But that didn't stop the community from coming together during that time. We had several conversations during some of the rougher times there, and just kind of trying to prop one another up a little bit and keep it going. But Matt, you're one of the more interesting guys I've ever met in my life in terms of your background. And the people listening to the show, for those that know you, will certainly know you from the fitness or bodybuilding world for sure. You've done many things from a fitness perspective. You've got some products out there that you produced, workouts and health and wellness stuff. You've done, I mean, I don't even know at this point how many like stories or how many times have you been featured in some of the major fitness publications?
Yeah, I mean, I've been blessed. It's hard to say, actually. I don't fully know. I think there's 18 to 20 plus different articles. Sometimes, Muscle and Fitness globally, I've been blessed to be with them. And so like, yeah, all over from from South Korea to Czech Republic, kind of. It's been a little bit of a fun thing, like traveling and seeing my articles randomly all over the globe. So I don't know fully. I know for sure about 18 features from Muscle Fitness, Muscle Insider, Train Magazine. So those types of things that are, and then they all have their own international versions. So yeah, I've been blessed with it. So
yeah, you're almost like syndicated, right? Nationally. I mean, I've been following you for a while now, and I've watched and seen, what fucking Matt's traveling first class to where Czech? Like what's going on? Like, and it's always like, yeah, I'm just out here, having a beer and, having a good time. And I imagine it's all very, it's all centered around that. And we're kind of laughing about it, but I also know it's very tough work. There's a lot of pressure there, and maybe we can dig into that a little bit. But so fitness has been a huge part of your life for a long time. It wasn't always, but you found your way into it and have certainly made it your own in a lot of ways, and also benefited by not just obviously the healthy lifestyle, but what the lifestyle and the culture and the community can provide. But I'm sure you have some insight on some of the not so great things that's also there too that we can dig into. You've got a history in politics, and I definitely want to talk about that. So we're gonna cover that as well. And you've had some within those sort of, I guess, experiences. I know there's been some influences for you. You've talked about them pretty openly, with what you can talk about for that matter. But some of those very influential people in the United States, in government, within politics, I guess, if you will, but just kind of what makes our country what it is. And I'm curious to dig into that a little bit.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
Dude, where do you even want to start? I mean, there's so much.
Oh, man. Well, I can start where I started.
Let's do that.
Okay, so grew up in Texas, obviously born in California, grew up in Texas. So that had we moved there. I should start. I lived in Japan for a little while too, early on. So having an international kind of background and appreciating other people's cultures was key for me. And I'm blessed to have my parents that allowed me to do that. So yeah, moved to Texas, grew up there. Texas is a land of football rules, and if you don't play sports, you're kind of a dork, a geek. I did not play sports. I played soccer, but was not football.
Football is life there,
Football is God. Like, so that whole, Friday Night Lights is very true. It was based on Odessa Permian High School, and that's literally legit how Texas lives and breathes, which is fine. It's just not
It wasn't you.
wasn't me. Yeah. So I was a skinny kid growing up, even at 27, I was 135 pounds.
Okay. So I was just going to say, a lot of people say that I was a skinny kid growing up, but
no, I was like a skinny kid. Like I weighed 135, or maybe even like 120 pounds in high school. Yeah.
when you graduated,
maybe like 130. Yeah. My wrists were as big as my biceps. So
that's pretty skinny, man.
Yeah. So, I mean, and I was like 6 foot with shoes on, 5'11".
Wow.
Yeah. So
tall and lean.
Yeah, it's very lean. My whole mom's side of the family is super lean. So I got those genes. But yeah, so that was my life. Obviously, I felt I was a different person on the inside. We can talk a little bit about that. But yeah, so grew up there, kind of obviously with that comes self-esteem issues, right? If people are calling you names, picking on you.
Yeah, man. Kids are fucking awful.
Yeah.
I mean, they're mean.
Yeah. Middle school.
So are adults.
Middle school was hell, but
that's the worst.
Yeah. Adults are mean, but they like know it. I think kids are just fucking mean. Excuse my language.
Yeah. But they get it from mom and dad. I'm going to be honest about that.
That's probably true. Your upbringing. Yeah. But so grew up in Texas, did not play sports, was a band dork, as they called it, or a band geek. Played saxophone for 8 years. So yeah, totally different lifestyle. Then moved, graduated from Baylor, got really involved at Baylor doing some crazy shit, which I don't even know if you know. I raised the mascots, the Baylor Bears. So
that's the answer to that question.
So so the two bears that are actually at Baylor right now.
These are fucking bears. These are real bears.
North American black bears.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And they're not small.
Joy and Lady, the two ones that I raised when I was this big, they're still there, 20 and 21 years old. So they're the longest running mascot, so to speak. I changed the program from a mascot program. They used to run on the field, and I canceled all that shit and turned it into like an educational outreach program because it was a little bit more humane.
Okay. So, I mean, you're down in Texas and there's a lot of things going on in Texas, right? There's the Longhorns down there. Like you've got, well, let's just say that whole region generally, and if we had to take all the schools, the whether it's SEC or ACC schools or Big 10, Big 12 schools, there's going to be several like animal mascots, right? And a good amount of it's like livestock, right?
Yeah. Bevo, the cattle,
right,
the Longhorn.
So what's
they drug the hell out of it, but they don't admit it, so we won't go.
Yeah, first, well,
pupils are like.
Well, that's what I was just about to ask you, I guess, with regard to like raising these animals. And bears are wild animals. I mean, by nature, right?
Yes. These animals are still wild. So yeah. So we were trained by an animal expert. My background a little bit, my mom worked at the San Antonio Zoo. So she worked in the education department. So I was working in the large mammals department as an intern with all the other bears. So I kind of had experience working with wild animals. Obviously in captivity though. These two bears were completely from an animal farm, I guess you want to call it. But we got them at 6 months old and we were their mom and their dad. And yeah, it's through operant learning. It's a positive reinforcement learning. So we had free contact, which we call it, meaning I engage with them with no barrier.
Okay.
A lot of animals now are protective contact where you just feed them or you teach them commands that might help with, getting medical care, like opening their mouth wide or whatever, so the dentist can look at their teeth and stuff. So we taught those commands to them. It obviously had a benefit of like raising the paw for Sikkim, which is the Baylor thing, or like opening their teeth to like pretend to roar, because bears don't roar on command. All the movies, they're just giving them a wide command and they dub it in.
Right.
And so, so we did all that. Hell, they lived in my apartment for a short time when I was there when they were little kids. Yeah. So little bears. So yeah, I mean, it was a great life experience there. I spent 8 hours a day with them and went to school 8 hours. So it was a full-time job, not a regular college life. I did not drink alcohol.
Right.
The university president was calling me on a daily basis. So yeah, no, I had to be really kind of like on my game, but it was a great life experience. Then they're still the longest running mascots at Baylor. So I'm proud of that.
That's outstanding. So, I mean, there's the raising animals, and then there's obviously like they have to show up for events. So are you there for all those events and all that stuff?
We used to travel for before I got Joy, who was my bear that I raised, and then Lady came after her. They're both sisters, but through different dads or whatever. But I had a larger bear, a 15-year-old bear named Billy. He was 510 pounds. He had been there for about 13 years at Baylor, one of the longest running. So he would be like kind of in the bear facility doing all like the meet and greets with people people, the new students.
Yeah.
And then we had another bear that would travel for the football games.
Gotcha.
I stopped the traveling after Chance was that bear. I stopped the traveling. So Joy and Lady, well, Joy went to a game or two, just sat on the sidelines, and she did not run on the field or anything. And then I stopped that altogether. I just thought it was, not humane. Loud music, bands, people throwing crap at us. Yeah. I mean, it's not their natural environment. So I think that if we had to have a live mascot and, before animal rights people go crazy, which probably had a valid reason to, I wanted to curve that before they shut down the whole thing and killed the tradition that had been around
altogether.
Yeah. So I turned it into more of an educational outreach program. We became a licensed Class C zoo, licensed by the USDA, Texas Parks and Wildlife. So it's actually a one exhibitor zoo. And now it became an actual accredited AZA they did just recently. So they're the only university mascot program that has an American Zoological Association credit. So that's super big for Baylor.
Man, that's awesome. I mean, you're doing all this before you're even 21 years old?
Yeah, I was 19 and 20.
So while all this is going on, what are you studying at Baylor?
I was pre-med for 2 years, and then I, got my first C in life. And so I dropped it and went pre-business. And
just freaked out?
Yeah, I just freaked out. I never got a C. So, young person, you don't know how to handle that. And so, dropped that and then went into pre-business and did employment law, kind of focus on corporate comms and human resource management.
Okay, that makes sense to me given sort of what's going on now.
Yeah.
Or what I've seen you do. But okay, so you do all this amazing stuff at school. We get out of school. When does the fitness part come in? Is
that came in
during school?
No, that came in at 27 years old.
Oh shoot! So we got
a lot of ground.
We got like some ground.
First came politics.
Yeah. So let's. What I do know about you is there's a couple of very interesting things just to kind of preset this up. One is you were at the White House for a period of time, working with basically the 43rd president of the United States, right? That's G.W. Bush, right?
George W.
Right, and then and then after that, you actually were working with Arnold Schwarzenegger here in the state of California when he was the governor.
Correct.
So there's a lot here to maybe unpack a little bit. So how did you get? I mean, what happened with the whole White House thing? That's just not the job you just get.
Yeah, so
man.
It kind of was a precursor is actually even Baylor. So life is about experiences, right? And it's all about people and connections in your life. So I was an Eagle Scout. I was speaking at an award ceremony in Texas, in Austin. I drove up to Austin from San Antonio because they were like, hey, Matt, come up, speak at this award ceremony. Because I was really involved with the Boy Scouts and worked at the summer camp and all this junk. So I was speaking at the award ceremony and said, hey, we're going to give this Good Scouting Award. We give it every year to some influential person. They said, oh, by the way, I didn't even know who it was. I got there and they said, oh, by the way, the recipient is the governor of Texas, George W. Bush. I was like, oh. They're like, let's go meet him, Matt. And I'm like, oh, all right. So they walk me in. He's there. He's like, hey, Matt, good to meet you. Blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh my God, this is interesting. I had never met any politicians or anybody. I wasn't intimidated for some reason. I never have been. They're just people.
Right.
So, and actually it helps in life if you think that way. So I met him. He walked with me. We sat next to each other for 3 hours and developed a conversation. He was sitting right next to William Sessions, the former FBI director, a Baylor grad as well, which was kind of interesting because I was going to Baylor. So Bush went home after that. He said, hey, I got to go say goodnight to my daughters. Let's stay in touch. We did. And then I sat in his seat next to Bill Sessions, former FBI director and a federal judge. And so we chatted and he's like, oh, where are you going to college? Blah, blah, blah. So we became friends and he helped start my political career, if you want to call it that. His son is Pete Sessions, a congressman from Texas. So I went up to intern with him my first summer at Baylor. And then I started in my junior year at Baylor, actually taking about a week out of school and traveling on the road to do advance work for the president. So I would volunteer to go take a week trip and go plan events for the president.
So what's that like, man? I mean, how old are you at this point?
My internship 18 to 20.
Yeah, I mean, you're a young man, and at this point, aside from I'm going to be honest, aside from the football thing, you're like the all-American kid so far, right? I mean, you've done everything, including save the Bears, literally. So, Okay, so you're 18, 19, and you're going into this thing now. What's it like to be an aide in that situation? What kind of things are you doing for these dignitaries or politicians?
Yeah. So it's called advance work. So basically, you travel in advance of the principal person, the president, vice president, some dignitary. You travel in advance of them, and you basically plan all their trips. So anything that you see on television, like let's just say the president speaking at one of my events was Bentonville, Arkansas, the Walmart headquarters. So Air Force One flew in. We had a hangar full of, we had to set up this hangar and make it be a rally. So, it's everything from coordinating like how it looks, what the design is, how the setup is, light staging, lighting, sound, to the motorcade movements, working with Secret Service, White House communications, and then obviously the whole arrival and the movements of the principal, as we call it. So that in a nutshell is advanced work. There's different people that do different roles. And so I was a site advanced person early on, meaning I was in charge of the physical site and like everything that went on from the build out to the design to everything.
I mean, that's a ton of responsibility for some pretty huge events. And I'm sure there's hundreds of people involved in this, right? I mean,
yeah, when the president travels, I can say this, it's about 500 people that start moving.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what are like the skills that you're developing at this point, as a young man, specific to this job description that you have and, kind of understanding, I mean, what are you picking up?
Yeah, that's a good thing. So yeah, when I was at Baylor, actually, I was in a service organization called the Baylor Chamber of Commerce, and they are the oldest organization on campus, founded in 1919. Actually, the university was founded in 1845 before it was the Republic of Texas. So we did all of the old traditions, the homecoming, all the events on campus. So I had a little bit built up some skills from that, and then I took it to the White House. But yeah, in the White House, I learned, I mean, it's a sink or swim situation. So you have to absorb a large amount of information, from code names to locations to every car in the motorcade has a name. So you're assimilating a lot of information. So it's really about thinking on your feet, thinking 3 steps ahead, critical thinking skills, where do you prioritize what? And then obviously knowing how to handle difficult situations with calmness and not freaking out.
Well, okay. So let's talk about that. So I mean, there's a lot of things happening here, a lot of moving pieces. Come on, dude. There's got to be some crazy shit happening like this behind the scenes. Give us some crazy shit.
I could say that, well, some not on my part, but I mean, there's been rallies where we thought people would show up and they didn't show up, and we have, international press covering. So you have to
wait. When you say people you thought were showing up,
like crowds, rarely. But there was a couple events where I built a huge stadium, I built a huge arena, and I'm like, oh crap,
and nobody's there.
Yeah, like POTUS vice president was coming in a matter of 2 hours, and I'm like, there's nobody fucking here. So we had to I pipe and draped walls and had bike racking in crowds to make smaller. So there's creative things that you do for that. Obviously, strategically placing the press where you want them to be so they get the right shots.
It's all theater.
It's not, I would say, smoke and mirrors, but it is a business. So it's like anybody branding a company. You're branding an individual, and I think people forget about they think politics is maybe oh, it's so, natural and real. And it is, but it's a business. I mean, these people are a brand, and and so we were in charge of that brand, and we had to be branded responsibly. So
that's a really interesting way of looking at it.
Yeah. I kind of view politics in a different way, I think, than most Americans. I would say, based on what I hear and read, I'm kind of laugh because they don't really know. I mean, I've this is not within the Bush administration. This is, Republicans or Democrats, we fill rooms with people that we want. They're strategically placed in certain places. I mean, I think even the Obama administration once got busted because they had we never did this. Cameras could not be preset in the room before an event.
Okay.
So news cameras couldn't come in before because they would turn them on.
Oh, and you would get hot mics.
Film.
Which we've seen plenty of in the last couple years.
So the Obama administration allowed it, and one guy turned it on, and it shows one of their advanced guys telling oh, this African American sit here. Oh, this Asian woman.
It's a bad look.
Yeah, it was bad luck, but
look.
Everybody does it technically, maybe not to that degree, but we're picking the people that stand behind the president for certain events, or we're filling a coffee shop that they're going to go visit with supporters. Yeah, it's just because you want to have proper dialogue and support
and you want to control the environment.
Yes, exactly.
1000% control. And I totally get that. I mean, I understand it. I understand why. I don't necessarily
I think people
like
are a little bit jaded by it though. They're like, what? That's horrible. And I'm like, if you were running a business,
if you were the president of company X
right,
and you were running a pet press conference, right, and you're about to release a new product, if you're Steve Jobs over at Apple, God damn it, they've got that thing set up for exactly the same reasons.
Oh yeah, that
right?
is so piped. Yeah.
Yeah. So all right, so that was kind of like the oops, like we don't have anybody here. We got any like, I mean, you know, when you think
major ones,
yeah, but I guess when you think, you know, dignitaries and politicians and whatnot, there's security concerns.
Yeah,
right?
I have a good one of that.
Yeah, like give us a good one.
I've just remembered this. So I was after my in my traveling with the president all the time. I did a special assignment from the White House to the State Department, so I worked for Joe Hagan, the deputy chief of staff to the president, at the State Department. So the State Department was paying me, but I reported to the White House. So the State Department hated me.
Because you were on their payroll.
Because I was on their payroll, but had no control. They didn't have any control. So I was, it was the G8 summit. You probably heard of that, the group of 8. So we were planning this large summit that was happening on Sea Island, Georgia, a 3-mile long island. All the, G8 world leaders, plus we had invited a total of 21 world leaders to the island. So we're talking nuclear submarine off the coast.
It's a major target, a massive target. Yeah, probably one of the biggest ones in the history of the world.
Right, because
how things have
President Bush had invited the broader African and greater Middle Eastern countries as well. So
it's hot.
It was a very...
It's hot.
Yeah. So I was in charge of I was in charge of all the accommodations, but then I was also in charge of 2 other world leaders, which became pretty interesting. So I was their lead advance representative and then protocol officer, which usually the White House, we don't play protocol officer unless they're the president or vice president, meaning there's proper pomp and circumstance and greetings and arrival things. And so usually your person that you work for is your country that you're representing. Well, I had to represent Yemen and Senegal. Senegal was actually pretty cool. President Abdoulaye Wade, he's an older gentleman. He was great. But Yemen was a very interesting country. Obviously, their views on things are a little different than the United States.
Slightly.
And President Saleh, I think I don't know if he's still the president. I should check on that. But he was one of the longest running leaders, if you'd like to say that, for a long time. So I'm
going to say dictator.
Yes, that was good. So President Saleh was my main principal that I was taking care of. And so, long story short, I had showed up. He was doing a major meeting with the president. I showed up to the suite. The Secret Service detail leader, a big African-American dude, came out of the suite when I was walking into the suite, and he had like an MP5 machine gun over his shoulder. He walked in and he said, "We are not going anywhere." And I was like, "Why?" And he goes, "Just go into the suite." And so I walked in. So before that, there's obviously meetings that are had, right? And conversations about what the dress will be, what the, down to who you'll be sitting next to. It's all based on order of precedence. Well, Yemen was the highest order of precedence for Middle Eastern countries. So they were sitting to the right of President Bush. Very key point. I walk in, we told them it was going to be Western attire, meaning men's business
suits, right?
Yeah, not ceremonial garb of your country. I walk in, he's in full Arab regalia, turban, gown, and he had a gold-plated 45 on his side and which came in a diplomatic pouch.
This is getting spicy.
And then a huge
saber.
One of those curved, sabers.
This is spicy.
Yes. So I was like, oh shit. So he's looking at me, he's like, "Let's go." And I'm like, so I'm like, "No, let's talk about this." I thought we were, I was letting you, I kind of spun my wheels. I was like, "Sir, it's Western attire. The rest of your,
never mind the gun."
Yeah. I kind of, I didn't go there. I didn't go there. Yeah. So I just kind of explained to him that it was Western attire, that, everybody else in his, all the Middle Eastern countries are going to be in that. Long story short, he's like, "No, I want to go like this." I was like, "Okay, but you're taking a class photo." Called it a class photo. Yeah. Class photo. And I said, "You're going to stick out. You might want to fit in, and be a part of the."
Nice play, man.
Yeah. So he starts walking, and I'm thinking to myself, we're not going anywhere, like with this gun on and the sword on. So he starts walking down the hallway of this nice hotel that we had bought out. And I said, so he's like, let's go. And I'm like, okay. So I said, nobody else is wearing their traditional garb with their ceremonial pieces. I'm just assuming they're ceremonial at this point, not active weapons. And he's like, oh, no, this is what I do. And I'm like, okay. So I get down to the limo that he's going in, and I have about a 15 to 20 minute car ride because it's on a larger island that we were on that he was on versus where the president was staying. We were on St. Simon's and the president was on Sea Island. So I'm like, okay, I got some time to buy. So the detail leader reminded me, we're not getting out of the car unless you figure this shit out,
Right.
you know, basically. So I convinced him. I tried to talk to him, that I said, you know, President Saleh, I said, I just need to be upfront with you. You know, you're sitting right next to the president of the United States. And I said, it would make him uncomfortable if you are wearing a gold-plated 45 and a sword. I said, none of your other leaders are going to be wearing any of that. I said, nor would the Secret Service feel comfortable protecting you and our president with that way.
Oh,
so
nice play.
So he said, oh, and he just looked at me and he got in the limo. And I don't sit in the limo with him because I'm not in that order. I sat in the police car that led the motorcade over. So I'm praying as we're driving
that
over.
He's not getting out of that limo.
So I radioed to my other colleague and said, we're going to hold, which means a hold room that we keep people in until they're ready to go out. Cause I was like, I got to buy time. So I get out of the car, run back to the limo to open he opens the door, and thank God he had taken off the gun and left it in the seat. He still had his sword on. Small bit.
All right. Well, hey, we're making progress here.
So anyways, we get to the hold room and he decides to still wear the sword, but he pulled it out and proved that it was a dull blade. And so the Secret Service,
they were okay. They gave him a pass.
Yeah. Sorry,
gave him a pass.
But yeah.
No, that is a fantastic story. I mean, it's just stuff that's happening that you never really think about, but actually makes perfect sense. Because if you watch how those dignitaries, politicians, bureaucrats, however you want to label them, operate in their own countries or in their own regions, that is very normal, right? In a lot of cases. And you know, now you've asked them all to come together.
Yes.
And that shit's shit's
yeah,
wild.
They even had like business cards that they made up. You know, the ones you get like with the perforated edges that you can buy at like Office Depot. Like they printed them all with their fake titles. My sources at 3-letter acronym agencies told me who they really were.
That's funny.
But
man.
yeah, it was very interesting.
So, I mean, I bet if we sat here all night, you could tell me a ton more stories like that or similar. But I think the experiences you're getting in this, obviously, and you were talking about sort of the soft skills of being able to communicate and handle those high pressure situations being so important. I'm sure there's some hard skills that are being learned there too about how to operate, not operate, what to do, where you put things, where you don't put thwhen know, where to stand, where not to stand from a safety perspective, and all those things kind of come into play. I don't need to I'd maybe get into all that, but when you're working for the president of the United States or you're working for the White House, there's going to be a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I mean, anywhere from, you're wired up with coded radios, encrypted radios, to Secret Service telling you, if something goes bad, this is what you do.
Yeah.
To, we're putting in, the blue goose is a bulletproof podium, to huge metal armor pierces,
Yeah.
So, I mean, it becomes very real really quick.
Yeah.
We have secure packages in motorcades. I'm not in the secure package. So when shit hits the fan, I don't get to go. So there's all sorts of reality that comes in. I think it becomes a matter of serving something greater than yourself.
Yeah.
And I think that I've always had a desire to do that. I think that I didn't join the military. My grandparents, my two grandfathers served in World War II and have gave their lives to, they didn't die in World War II, but they had traumatic events post World War II. So they literally, that generation of men that went to fight, and then the women that supported them by building the things that they did in the United States, I kind of always have been like, that's an amazing human being that could do that. And so I've always had something in me that just wanted to serve the greater good. And I get validation from that.
Were you there for the 9/11 events?
Yeah. So I graduated in December of 2001. So 9/11, I remember exactly where it was. My last semester at Baylor, about to go to class, watching it on my TV, watching the Today Show as Matt Lauer was talking and the plane went right, over through his head. I still remember like it was yesterday. Called my mom and said, when the first plane hit, I called her and I said, we're under attack. I just knew that something was up, that this doesn't happen. When the second plane hit, obviously Baylor was a huge target because we were the largest Baptist institution in the world. So for religious reasons, from the people obviously in the Middle East and things, we were locked down instantly. And then literally I found myself December 31st in Washington, D.C., working at the White House. And we had drills. I mean, I had a victim rescue mask at my desk, which was it wouldn't have saved me, but it's a plastic little sheet thing that you put over with it to help from chemical and biological attacks.
Right.
And we would literally, say, hey, we have an attack coming potentially. They'd open the gates of West Exec and we'd all run out. This was before cell phones. I had a BlackBerry and a pager, and they say, we'll page you when you can come back. And this was a regular.
They were just drilling?
No, this was like.
These were like.
Yeah, these were like
true alerts.
Like they thought that there was. Yeah. Because this was January of 2022. So we were still, this is the day we decided to bomb Iraq. Actually, I have a really interesting, that was probably one of my coolest like life experiences. I was walking in the West Wing. I was going up the stairs, which was right underneath the Oval. There's stairs that go up. So I was walking up the stairs, and Colin Powell was walking down. Mm-hmm. And he said, good evening. And I said, good evening, sir. And he left. And that was his meeting that he had just had with President Bush to decide to go to war. And I looked out the window of the Rose Garden, and you could see President Bush walking with the dogs, Barney and Spot, on the lawn to gather his thoughts. And I was probably the first person he talked to outside of the president. So it was really cool. I have the newspaper still the next day of saying that we went to,
we were going to war.
Yeah. So,
wow, that's intense. God. So, I mean, along the way, there's these other things that are happening. So Boy Scouts, right? Giving a speech, sitting with the president, meeting, these other people that ultimately put you in these positions. Right. So while you're working for President Bush, the Presidential Fitness Council becomes a thing.
Well, that would have been before my time.
Okay.
So that 41 built the President's Fitness Council, which Schwarzenegger sat on. Yeah.
That's
so
right.
It was still a thing, but his father, 41, built it up to be, and it was popular during that whole movement in the early 90s.
Right.
90s. That kind of where Schwarzenegger came into play.
Right.
I did not, to be honest, know anything about Arnold Schwarzenegger other than he was some bodybuilder guy. I mean, I wasn't.
This is going to be the best part,
I wasn't even
man.
in fitness. I mean,
you had no idea.
I never lifted a weight in my life. I never went to a gym. I never even thought about it. And I was 25 when I did the inauguration for the president, and Mrs. Bush, the second one, was in charge of official proceedings, which is them being sworn in and like all the official stuff.
So all the stuff that you see on stage on TV.
Everything that has to make him constitutionally president, me and two other people were responsible for organizing. Okay. So did that. And everybody's, in DC fighting for, we got to go back to the White House. So all these people are stabbing each other in the back. The wolves come out, right? All your friends turn on you because everybody wants to go work in the White House or some influential party member. So I was trying to vie to get back in the White House. We're all focused on that. Meanwhile, a guy actually that I had, we have volunteers that help us on the road, like I did in college. Some guys are older business professionals because we need more people to help, but they're, good party members. So they would help us on the road with all of our events. And so one of the guys actually was working for Arnold Schwarzenegger as his director of advance, which is what I did.
Which is what you were doing.
Well, I was not the director, but I was in the advance. It was what I was doing. So he kept calling me and saying, hey, come out to California. You should come work for Arnold. And I was like, Arnold Schwarzenegger. I was like Jesse Ventura? No. No, I'm not doing that. I'm like the guy from Terminator, whatever.
That's the guy.
Yeah. And so I was like, nah. There's some celebrity governor thing. I'm not doing it. I'm going to work for the president. And so
this makes perfect sense for me, but at the same time, dude, that sounds awesome.
Yeah. So, I mean, he called 5 times over probably a 2-month time frame. Meanwhile, I was set and staying in DC. And then I finally said, because politicians are cheap, right? So they're not going to pay for me to fly out there. That's like corporations. I said, pay for me to fly all the way across the country, put me up in a hotel, and I need to meet the guy if you want me to be his advance representative, or I was deputy director. If you want me to be that close to him, spending every day with the man, I need to get to know him, see if we even vibe. And I was thinking they're not going to. So the next day he called me. He's like, we're booking you a ticket. I was like, all right. flew me out, put me up in the Hilton, which is actually where he stayed all those years. He had a suite on one of the floors they took over because he never bought a home in Sacramento. And so he lived there. I didn't even know. And I was staying there at the time. And I remember opening my blinds and there was like the California Capitol. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. I was like, I don't know if I want to be here. I'm so far away from DC. I obviously was born in California, raised in Texas. So I was like, this maybe could be interesting coming back to my state. But I was kind of like depressed. I was like, this isn't going to go well.
Well, I mean, you'd been coming off. I mean, how do you match or do better than where you'd come from?
I mean, it's kind of tough. Yeah. And we can talk about that. But like being a 22-year-old working for the most powerful man in the world, and I don't mean to be like arrogant, but like people, it went to their head for some people. I felt just super humbled to be there every day, living history, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And like later in life now, I'm like, damn, like most people end their career with that, not start their career with that because it makes everything else really boring. So I've struggled with my own eat later with different jobs in life. Like, how do you come back from working for the president?
It's like being a pro athlete maybe,
right.
Or, I hear from even like you made the military reference, guys, these operators that are coming back from just being deep into combat and not knowing how to adjust or come out of that. I mean, the adrenaline rush, the constantly being switched on, everything's high speed. You're making split second decisions,
Absolutely,
life and death decisions all the time. You're
given a lot of authority.
You're given it. There's so much there to come back to kind of the regular world. How do you make that adaptation?
Right.
Same with, and going back to like pro sports, you see people really struggle, like coming from fame in sports, or it's over for whatever reason, and they struggle. I mean, there's probably a lot of parallels.
I never thought of it that way until just now, and actually, that's very.
But what you said there is
very
like
true.
How do you go from again being in this totally high speed, high profile?
I lived out of a suitcase mostly, and travel with these amazing individuals. And
let's be honest, Sacramento, California is not.
It's
Washington,
a little sleepy.
DC. So
and so I was like, okay. So I walked over to the Capitol and walked into the governor's office, which I thought was a little interesting. I'm like, okay, they're actually letting me do all this. So I didn't think they were going to do this. So I walk in. I remember walking into the big. There's an office between the governor's private office and there's this big table. It's iconic because like Reagan was there and all the amazing individuals. And so I walk in and there's Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I was like. And he like shook my hand and he said, "Oh, good to have you, Matt," all that stuff. And we hit it off. Like that was probably the only person that I misjudged in my life. And it was actually a good thing.
What were you, wait. So when you say misjudged, what were you thinking versus what you got?
I thought he was just some like celebrity governor that was like out of touch. That was like this, goofy bodybuilder who was very arrogant and stuff. And to be honest, now 16 years later, having a friendship relationship with him, it's the most opposite of who he is. I mean, the guy came with $100 in his wallet, is a staunch patriot of America, and is a marketing genius, and taught me a lot about that. We can go into that. And just a smart, shrewd businessman. He's one of the larger landowners in the United States. And so, I just learned so much from him over the course of our together, and even still to this day. I just totally misjudged him. And I knew at that point when I first met him that you could just tell something in his eyes that I was like,
okay, that's what I was going to ask. Like, what's the moment where you go, oh shit?
I think the way that he, with all his fame, the way that he just met me with where I was at and like, was like, "Matt, good to meet you. So happy to have you here. You be a part of the team. I'd love to have you." Like, he was just very honest. And I later found out, he's actually very introverted, and, he can be introverted and extroverted, but he, like smoking stogies, playing chess. He's very focused. He's loves reading books and things. So there's just, it's a different side of him that I finally saw, the real Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Interesting.
And so I was like, okay, I want to come work here.
And just like that.
And from then on, I called my mom, I remember, and saying, "Hey, I'm moving to California." And so I did that. And then he took me on a whirlwind tour of seeing amazing things in the world and meeting crazy people. And I think the best thing is, though, the relationship that we still have. So I would say that's probably my biggest, I guess, gift I have out of that whole experience.
Yeah. So let's talk about it. I mean, the guy, you mentioned some very key character traits there that I think most people would hope that people describe them as, in terms of being honest, genuine, uh, focused. Um, I think any person wants to be those things
Yeah.
at times in their life, but I mean, maybe you can share like what, how did aside from that, you knew kind of right away, all right, this is a dude I can definitely work for and learn from. Maybe just walk us through some of those learning experiences and how he influenced you as a man,
Yeah.
as a person. And then again, I know that this whole thing kind of started with the fitness industry and kind of where it started, or that's how we started. And obviously that ends up being a big piece here. I want
Right.
to talk about that too, but maybe you can just kind of lead into
Yeah,
it.
no, that's a good point. I think when you talk about like how he helped develop me or as a man and an individual, and I would say that I guess through spending so much time with him and kind of like seeing it through his eyes and seeing how he interacted and navigated, he taught me that I think the main key, and I try to talk about this on my platforms and things, is that he taught me that the mind is the most powerful tool on earth, and whatever you put your mind to, you can physically achieve. And I think that is maybe easy to say.
Oh, totally. You hear people say it all the time.
Yeah, but it's actually like true. So it might be easy to say that, but like it's all about, first of all, believing in yourself, and it's kind of his rules that he lives by, right? I think probably people have talked about this, like believing in yourself, not listening to the naysayers, willing to fail, giving back, all those, working your ass off, working like hell. So those are kind of his keys to success. And he actually physically lives
He
by
does that.
Yeah. And like, I mean, just knowing, meeting him who he is, and then realizing his backstory and how appreciative he is of where he came from, I think is amazing, because a lot of people get lost. I mean, he has millions and millions of dollars, the most successful action hero of all time, one of the largest landowners in the United States, the governor of California. I mean, the list goes on and on of his achievements, but he's still Arnold, the kid that came over in 1968, and Joe Weider found him, so he keeps his friends, he keeps a small network. He trusts not a ton of people because obviously, of his
People want a piece.
yeah. And so I think that when he finds good people, he sticks by them and he's super loyal. And I think that was part of it, seeing it. But back to I think that what I learned is that whatever I put my mind to, I kind of knew that already, right? Like I believe in visualization. I believe in, I already said I was going to go work for the president. I did.
You'd already done that at this point.
I said I wanted to, graduate from Baylor. I went and did that. I did that when I was a kid in middle school. I said I wanted to go to Baylor University. I did that. So like, the bear thing I didn't know about, but like, I said I wanted to, do all these things. So he believes in the same thing about naming something, picking hard goals and almost not achievable goals and obtaining them. And I think that he kind of helped reinstill that in me, that whatever you physically actually put your mind to, you can achieve. And the mind is so powerful that you can will it to be sick. You can will yourself to be sick. You can will yourself to become successful. And I think the largest issue that we have is our own selves, saying,
Getting out of your own way.
yeah, like you're the biggest detriment to yourself because you're telling yourself negative thoughts over and over that you don't even probably realize. There's actually a really good book on it I'm reading right now called Chatter. And it's like the most important conversations you have are with yourself. And it's actually a really good book. But so yeah, he kind of helped basically validate that statement to me through the course of his life, and then how I witnessed watching him daily for 3+ years.
Is there anything specific you were struggling with in your own head that, this realization kind of helped you?
Yeah, I think over
come to?
time, I mean, yeah, I was, when I worked for him, I was 135 pound, 5'11" kid. And I was just like not happy with the way I looked. I had obviously self-esteem issues. I dove myself into work to not,
Like an
to not deal with,
overcompensation?
and then so then years later in 2007, I started working out. I just went into a gym at 10:30 at night. Because I felt kind of like, it felt awkward and like, not feeling good about how I looked and intimidated by the big dudes in the gym. And so I went into a gym, worked out at 24 Hour Fitness in Roseville, California. I still remember it. And, started working out there and then haven't stopped. So about 6 months into that, I named what I wanted. I said, I will be in Muscle and Fitness magazine and I'll be a sponsored athlete.
Okay, so hold on. I mean, that's a lot, right? Because a lot of people walk into gyms, right? And a lot of people look around and they go, I want to look like that person, or, they thumb through social media or, a magazine or whatever else. And that's what I want. And they say things like that, right? But the reality of that becomes a reality with very shortly, right? And it's people like talking about getting out of your own way. One of those things is having an unrealistic expectation,
Sure.
right? You said setting goals, right? There's difference between expectations and goals, right? So there's goals, and you need to set yourself up with goals and maybe some almost unachievable goals, but
Aim high.
The expectations that you set along the way are not the goals. They're the expectations. And then as you get to those things, this is in my mind, you almost, when you hit that, you're like, well, that's because that's what I planned for. Right. And that's where I got to, which now sets up the next thing, which is on the
I call them milestones.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah. So milestones, thresholds, whatever they might be for you. And so, well, again, in this industry, what you see is people setting those things without understanding the reality. They have a good intention there, right? Sure. But they don't really understand the reality of what it's going to take to do that. And they call it goals, but it's more like commitments.
Or a wish.
Yeah. Like,
or a dream.
I'm going to get up and go to my goal is to get up and go to the gym 3 days a week. That's not a fucking goal. That needs to be your commitment to hit a goal, whatever that is, right? That's not really a goal.
And I talk a lot about, like, you need to set finite goals. Like people that say, I want to lose weight. You're never gonna, you want to lose weight by November 15th of this year because you have a wedding that you want to be at, or your husband's anniversary or whatever. Those are definite goals. And then they keep you accountable. Right. So that when you want to sleep in, you're like, oh shit, I got to get up. And so, I think the difference is I actually believed it. I think people set goals because other people do them, or because they think it sounds good, or, oh, I just want to get up in life. No, like I believed it because I learned a lot of that from Arnold. Like I wouldn't going to say, like, I actually didn't say I was going to be on the cover of Muscle and Fitness magazine. I said, I want to be in Muscle and Fitness magazine because the cover might be a little unattainable at times. But I said, no, I wanted to be in it. And I believed I would. It took 7 years every day going to the gym, 7 years. Achieving it. And then when I tried, it didn't work the first time. So I wrote a handwritten letter to Sean Perrine, the editor. He's now passed away, but Sean was an amazing man. And Old School sent it to him with photos, a letter, and I actually got a response. Just
the grinding, right?
Yeah, it's literally like doing things that people don't think work anymore.
Or they won't do because it just seems like,
or they're intimidated. Yeah, because they're like, oh, he's never going to respond. That's the
negative.
Yeah.
Comes back to the negative. Yeah.
People told me all the time, like, what, you don't look that good, or no, it's the naysayers, So it's all the stuff I think that I learned by spending so much time with such an extremely successful man, and several of them throughout my career, from, presidents to world leaders to Schwarzenegger to hell, I had a private audience with the Dalai Lama. So I'm just saying, like, so like, these are like things that a young person, I was very blessed to experience that. And so I took all those skills and took all that, stuff that I absorbed over life and did it.
Yep.
And it's about doing it.
Yeah. I mean, you just mentioned, all these amazing people, all these amazing experiences. To you, your perspective is going to be different than a lot of other people.
Yeah.
But at the same time, that could work. That could be a double-edged sword. It could be a double-edged sword because you would achieve so much. There could be some danger in saying I'm going to do that and never make it, and then what? But
to be honest, there has been points of some struggle like that, but that's what I consider like failing, right? And every successmesual person's failed in life more than most people think.
Yeah.
And this,
right?
Owning multiple businesses and things. So like, I mean, the failure is still hard, to be honest. I still struggle with sometimes the certain things I set my goal, like, even before the pandemic, for instance, I had like, I worked my ass off to be in a photo shoot. They didn't pick it up. And I was like, what the hell? But then the magazine crumbled, and they're just now bringing it was Muscle and Fitness, and they just now are bringing the magazine in print form back. But we had all thought, oh, they had already told me, send it to us. We want it. And then all of a sudden it was like,
it's gone
because they've changed ownerships. So it was a very different thing. So, I mean, yeah, we all have, it's not all easy for me. A lot of people think, oh, it's so easy, Matt, for you. And it's like, you don't really see the side of like the grind every day, or people are like, oh, how do you stay so fit every day? Well, I'm not eating, sure, I post like my fun foods or drinking whiskey, but like people don't see the daily thing of me going to the gym for several hours a day, me eating my consistent same meals. And I'm not trying to be like, ooh, sad me, but I'm saying it's really about consistency and dedication. It's not about like setting goals. It's really about what you do to get to those goals and the journey there.
Yeah. This journey, this 7-year journey to make it into the magazine. I mean, you learn a lot, and the only way to learn this stuff is to literally do what you just said. And if you're being that consistent, you learn a lot of lessons.
Yeah, because it's a long tunnel. People don't really see there's light at the end of the tunnel. Well,
it's a long, dark tunnel, right? I'm curious about the bodybuilding aspect. I mean, obviously, you had this vision in your head. This is what I want to do. How much? And I just want to go back to this for a second, because of his place in all of this. How much of the fitness aspect did Arnold have to do with?
Actually, none of it.
Yeah. So
to be honest, like I didn't work out.
I guess I'm not shocked after hearing this after getting this far with you. I guess I'm not shocked by that, but I think a lot of people would be, to be like, well, of course like now you're going to be connected. You're going to be all around all these people in the industry. But you just said, and for those people that don't know the location of what Matt's talking about, Roseville is not a big place. It's actually exploded in the last probably a couple of years because, it's actually a great place to be. It's still very affordable. Schools are great there. There's a lot of good things there, but we're going back a ways. Very small, very rural, quite frankly. Kind of an up and coming like bedroom community that served the city of Sacramento, and a lot of the government buildings that were coming up are, there at the same time, because you have all the support companies on. For example, I know the FBI just opened Roseville as kind of their headquarters there. Yeah. So they're supporting this, that, but Roseville 24-hour fitness is not like
it's a
Venice Gold's Gym, right?
And I had never been to Venice Gold's Gym until, I had been there when he was governor. But it was basically because, and people think I must be crazy, I pull up in a motorcade with Arnold Schwarzenegger to Gold's Venice Gym. I just stand by the motorcade, right? And I'm like, okay, why is he here? We got to get going to, like,
we got to get to the next.
This wasn't even on my radar. I'm like, hey, we've got to get to this meeting. Like, let's hurry up.
That's interesting.
So like, it wasn't even on my radar. Actually, that's a really good point you brought up. Arnold, we actually never talked about fitness. Rarely, maybe a couple occasions. But what we mostly talked about was, like I mentioned, the thoughts of being successful and how to become successful, and the mentality and your mindset, and visualization and marketing tactics, and how to market and brand yourself, and all these things that later would come into success in whatever avenue you choose to do. But I happen to go down an avenue of wanting to do fitness stuff too. So, I mean, we talked about like politics, business, playing chess, like, he had stacks of the Arnold Almanac, and he would sign them and hand them out to me, or we'd work rope lines. And, I'd be like, I remember the first time I knew that this guy was like, not just a governor, even though I signed up, but I still didn't comprehend that he was Arnold Schwarzenegger that built a billion-dollar industry and is the face really of it. And they're God, like a God, like he's one of the founders. Yeah, still it. Right. So like, I remember we were in a rope line in like, I don't even know where. And a rope line meaning like people line up on the rope, and we were in some school or some outside area. There was a dude over on the corner, and he was like, I could tell he was like a bigger guy, had a t-shirt on, like kind of baggy t-shirt. And Arnold starts working the crowd, and I'm right behind him, because if people hand him shit, I just take it and put it in a bag. So we're working the line. And then I see like this guy, and I'm like, what the hell is this from? He starts taking off his shirt, and he's flexing, and so Arnold walks up,
the wildest shit, man.
Arnold walks up to me. He's like, oh, very nice. Your arm needs to work. You need to work a little bit on this. And he's like critiquing him and shit. And I was just like, are you fucking serious?
But like, this guy's the best day of this guy's life.
He couldn't even speak. He was
this is the best day of this guy's
like
life.
He was like dumbfounded, and I was like, this is a grown ass man.
It's like grown ass man.
And he had the Arnold Almanac, and he was like, and then Arnold like pulls out his big Sharpie, signs it and gives it back to the guy. And the guy didn't even say one word.
That
to the
guy
man.
could die right,
Right.
there, and he would have lived his whole life.
Right.
Yeah.
And this is before like social media. You know, this is before Instagram. Really.
Oh, he went straight to the gym to tell all his friends. Yeah.
So it was just, and I kind of just like sat back at the end of the event. And I was like, who is this guy really? Like I had
that kind of an impact.
And I think, to be honest, that's why him and I became so close, and he trusted me
because you didn't put that there.
I had no idea who the man was other than who I met. And I think a lot of people came in, you know, treating him as like they were ass kissers there. Yes, sir. No, sir. And I literally told him, I remember the day that we did an event and how I earned his trust. I think he's big in trust. And so for the first 6 months, he was like, oh yeah, this new guy, yeah, sure, I'm doing things. But he didn't listen to a lot of what I had to say. And so I remember there was an event, we were doing a thing with George Stephanopoulos. It was a major network interview. We were in some, I think the California Library or whatever, one of the main buildings off at the Capitol. And I was sitting in for Arnold because I was about his height, sitting in a chair. So they were fixing the cameras, the 2-shoot cameras at me. And I was talking to George Stephanopoulos, which is kind of weird anyways, but I was talking to George Stephanopoulos and we were chatting. And then, so it was during the levee breaks. California was having all those levee breaks. Yeah. And so I had, with the comms director, this new communications director, built this poster there was 6 photos of the different levees in California, no names on them. We just put photos. And so Arnold walks in, we call him the governor at the time. So the governor walked in and his communications director, who was fairly new, and Arnold goes, we were briefing. I was briefing. Okay, so we're going to put this poster up. You're going to talk to the poster. He's like, well, where's the names? And of course the comms director threw me under the bus. Yeah, Matt, where's the names? And I'm like, he's like, we need the names up so I know. And they're like, okay, well, yeah, sure, we'll get the names. And he goes, does anybody think we shouldn't do that? And I was like, yeah. He's like, why? I said, because I think you'd look stupid.
Just straight up.
I just said that. And the guy, everybody was like, you know, and I said to him, and I said it respectfully. I said, sir, I think you're the governor of California. You should know where these locations are. I said, let's focus in on 3 of them and you don't have to remember the others. Yeah. So I went through and he's like, okay. And from then on, like I overruled a lot of the, you know, he
a lot of the stupid shit other people tried to do. Let's be honest.
Yeah. So, but yeah, so we built a trust factor there because he knew that I was there to take care of his image and him.
It's marketing, right? Which you're an expert at this point, right?
Yeah, it's not an expert, but
I mean,
I had a lot of experience.
That's what I'm saying, right? And real world experience, not like what they taught you in school or what they taught you.
I didn't even actually use any of it.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I think you should go to school. Good thing, but
yeah. No, I guess what I mean is that's coming back to the soft skills and understanding what's really important to the man and to the people and
it's reading people,
right?
And really reading what they are and who they are and what they mean and how you can best help them.
Let's not overcomplicate shit. No. Let's try to make it simple and get the message clear.
And be honest. Yeah. I think it's about being honest. Like, don't just tell someone what they want to hear.
Well, the more you complicate it, the more difficult it is to explain and the more complicated it is to maybe keep that line going. So, man, so
we kind of,
well, I mean, we came back because I asked you about his influence on the fitness aspect of your life, but we opened up by saying, I mean, you've been in almost 24 features, you know, now in fitness magazines. And so there's this whole other life that you've lived, right? It's sort of almost parallel to and beyond the politics. Now it's in the fitness industry, which is it's a crazy industry in and of itself. So now we're jumping through all these things like you're the White House, you're working for the governor, and now you're in the fitness industry, and you're not just in the industry and you just didn't do a photo shoot. You've been in many of them and you're a celebrity and people know about you, and not because you get on stage and you compete with the freaks, right? Like, and when I say that, I mean that with air quotes, because that is a very, very small piece of the larger community. It gets a lot of attention, right? And there's money in it, and and that's why. But it is a very, very small piece of
a very niche part of
the whole. But going back to the Arnold thing, that's how he kind of made his name. He was that freaky guy.
And to be honest, that was never his ultimate goal.
Interesting.
People don't really, I think, and I don't tell his story, but being a young boy in Austria, he knew he wanted to get the hell out of there for whatever his reasons. He explains it in his books and all that, but he knew he wanted to get out. And so his avenue was through his fitness, but that was not his end goal. He wanted to become a movie star,
Mm.
and then through
Right.
that, he learned. His parents taught him that when the currency dies and there is a economy crushes,
You need
true ownership or true wealth is land ownership, and so he invested a lot of his monies from his success in land, and so I think there was an end to a mean, and that was a way that he found his ticket to the United States.
Wow, Joe Weider said, "Hey, come on board," and he was going to pay him money and take care of him, and
they don't do that stuff
No.
really anymore. So it's interesting to hear his, like, people building furniture for him and like guys at the gym, like giving him sofas and TVs and shit to make it, to be nice. And he was a bricklayer,
Right.
in LA. So like, it just is fascinating to me because it's a different community, but we can go into that. But yeah, to go back to your, I mean, yes.
So
I never did competitions. I never wanted to go do that route. I knew early on that there's a lot of politics involved in that. I came from a big political background. This is just in different politics, and I didn't want to get involved in
shit.
it.
We
I
gotta talk
figured,
about the politics.
I
though.
figured, my goal that I set of being in magazines was competitive enough, and you have to be almost show ready in a men's physique way, but we can go into that later, to really be worthy of being in a magazine,
Sure.
because you're competing against millions of guys that say, "Oh, I want to be in the magazine." People don't really get it. There's a lot of people that have way better physiques than me.
So what's the secret?
The secret is relationships.
Back to the soft skills.
Yeah. The secret is old school skills. I get asked lots of times a day, how do I get into a magazine here? Don't I look, guys sending me photos of themselves, all this stuff. And I'm just like, okay, it's business. The fitness industry is a business. It's not, I don't think a lot of young guys realize that. They think, I'm going to go work out. I'm a pretty face. I got good muscles. They think they're going to get in a magazine. I'm like, do you realize how many millions of people are personal trainers or played football and have a great physique? Everyone that you see on Instagram.
Right.
And so,
Which has just made it a whole other
it's
thing.
completely oversaturated market. Right. So from a business perspective, so how you build relationships are old school skills. I would go to expos. I wouldn't go to meet Sergi Constantine.
Right.
I would go meet the Muscle and Fitness editor. I would go meet Train Magazine's editor, who I still have, I would go meet, Muscle Insider in Canada.
This is the people making the decisions.
Yeah. And building relationships with them. And then you become a friend of theirs. And then when you pitch a workout or an article or whatever, they're like, sure. And so it's a matter of really old school skills. Same with supplement companies. All these big dudes walk around wanting free supplements or free, but they don't realize that you have to build a relationship first if you want to get the contract. And so, because they're getting hit every day by thousands of DMs
Tom, Dick,
now.
and Harry,
Yeah. And what is it? What's the value for them to send you something besides you having big followings or whatever?
Yeah.
It doesn't really actually matter about that. There's now these micro influencing communities. So
Right. A tub of protein doesn't cost them a dime. So
Right.
you think this dude sent me, like a box of supplements or I don't know.
I'm like, that's a couple of bucks, dude.
Right.
Like,
If that.
So, yeah. So I guess it's the old school stuff that I've learned along the way that, I just went to the source, built a relationship, and then they stay. And they and now it's changed a little bit. So the people that are trying that tactic now, I think it's changed. I think people are still, it's become so saturated that I think the heads of these, the editors and these people that make decisions, CEOs of companies, they're making their groups even smaller.
Yeah,
and
so
like, who do I trust? And who's like, they're going to their old school people that they can rely on consistently.
And those people are feeding them the people to then talk to.
Right.
Yeah.
Or if I already have that relationship, they're going to just come back to me and say, okay, you're a reliable source. I'm going to keep coming to you. So,
yeah, it's you mentioned there was a couple of things that came up there. One being, if you're in the men's physique side of things and this is what you're doing, you have to maintain a level of, I'm going to call it fitness. Let's just say you're going to have to maintain a physique
right.
that puts you in a position to be sort of on almost a moment's notice or within a few weeks, be ready for a shoot. Maybe you can talk about that lifestyle. I mean, what's the reality of that? And going back, like you just mentioned, like there's so many people out there that have amazing physiques, right? And seemingly can kind of get away with a lot, right? That meaning I still have friends to this day. This was never me, and it certainly isn't me now, at 47 years old or whatever I am. But I mean, they could eat fucking Pop-Tarts and pancakes every day and still look like a comic book character. Fucking piss me off, right? Drink beers every
I don't know
night,
what they're taking.
you know, whatever else. I mean, and even some of them were still like, even on that level, weren't, if they were, it wasn't very much, not like some of the other dudes, or not at all. And still, it's like, damn, you know,
well, there's different, obviously, body types.
Right. So there's all that. But
endos.
I guess my point is that isn't everybody.
No.
And it's definitely not fair to saddle a guy that looks great, that may have great genetics with, well, he's got great genetics. And so that's the answer. You know, that's what he does. And he does a lot of drugs. So some of that might be true, but I don't think it's fair to saddle somebody with that and say that is the reason. That is absolutely not 100% true. So you can't say that, but maybe you can talk about the realities of that world and what you've seen.
Yeah. I mean, I think it all depends.
What it costs you.
Yeah. I think it all depends on, how do I say it? Like what route you choose in the modeling, fitness modeling world. So like I determined my own, I didn't go with an agent. I was my own agent. I called on editors. I didn't give anybody else money.
So you determine your own value.
And I also determined my own schedule. Mm-hmm. So I could write. So what I chose to do long ago, I learned it from a couple of different guys that have been in the industry for a while. I decided to provide content and value to it, not just be a pretty face that someone hoped to pick for a shoot. So I would write a feature or write a workout and then pitch that. They would like it. And then they would shoot me for that thing.
Smart.
So other guys work for agencies and, you know, are called at a moment's notice to go do a GNC shoot. Sure, it pays lots of money, or a different shoot, or then you have like the whole kind of like clothing model, like the Under Armour guys that stand there in the football shirts and uniforms and take the photos that, you know, stand this way, turn left, turn right. Like it's boring as hell, but Under Armour pays thousands of dollars a day for you to just put on football clothes and look good. And so cool. But I'd rather like see one of my pieces of art or whatever come to life and fruition through me writing. So for me, I could, obviously, well, social media has another play in this, but for me, if without social media, I could prepare like 3 months for a shoot, you know,
write your feature,
write my feature. Well, I'd already written it or pitch the idea and then finalize it and then shoot it. But I would have to, now with social media involved, people expect you to be like your magazine
all the time
or a magazine. Yeah. And I think the reality is that can really mess you up in my head. And it's affected me too sometimes. Like then you start getting into, oh God, do I need to Photoshop this? And you think about those things and you're like, no, I want to be authentic. And so there's this whole like battle of, I know it sounds really stupid that I'm saying this, but like you want to, because you're a brand, right? People see you in a magazine, want to be like you or want to get as fit as you or like that workout. And then when they see you on your social media platform, they expect you to look like that photo. But in reality, people don't really realize that there is some, not to say smoke and mirrors behind it, but there is some editing that goes on, right?
Dude, this doesn't sound stupid to me at all. You mentioned like it's not at all. I mean, to me as a reasonable person, like I get this, but there's a huge part of our civilization that doesn't get this.
Because,
they still don't get it.
No. And I think, and even I can say this, and I don't mean to, I might go out a little unconventional way, but getting ready for a photo shoot is not necessarily the healthiest thing.
I'm going to say it's probably borderline. It's very unhealthy. However, depends
that's
on,
a whole nother subject.
Depends on what level you're going to. It depends on what kind of
But I mean, I'll just blanket statement this. I probably were going to get a lot of shit for it, but in order to be on a cover of a magazine, I have never seen a natural person be on the cover of a magazine.
Right.
I'll just say that.
Period.
Unless you're shooting for a natural magazine. And I don't even know if that's the case because they test in advance and they give you warning. So I'll just say that all these I'm natty people out there and they're 17 years old and ripped to hell. That's not physically possible. I'm sorry. I don't care if you're Arnold Schwarzenegger's genes. Look at Arnold. He wasn't veined out and thin pencil skin. He was well physique, but you could tell that he was natural early on.
That's a very good point.
Yeah. So I just think it's funny when these people claim I'm natty or all lifetime natural.
Yeah. I mean, you're saying that because you have the inside scoop.
Yeah. And I've seen people's full protocols that they send to their sponsors by accident and then get dropped from their sponsorship.
Like, oop, I hit send
like,
on that.
Shit. I said, we won't mention names, but yeah. So, I mean, back to your question is, I think it depends on what you are, but there is a consistent, I think, desire for people to always stay like photo shoot ready, especially a lot of these Instagram influencers or Insta famous people, which I don't consider them famous. I just think that people use the term famous. And when people start talking I'm digressing, but when people say my fans, it bothers the hell out of me because I don't have fans. I have followers and I engage with them and people want to follow me. I'm not Tom Cruise. I'm not Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'm not anybody like that. I don't have fans. I have followers. And so I think when people start to lose reality and go like, oh, my fans. And I don't even care if you're like for instance, I'll throw a name out because Daniel Bailey or Rob Bailey or Steve, he doesn't even refer to they don't refer to themselves that having fans.
Yeah.
They say followers. Like, thank you guys. Yeah. These guys are like legit good people. I know them personally, met them multiple times. We've hung out, done things like they supported me from it's like, so these people are real and they don't have. So when I see another person like
it's a business.
Yes. And so they value you as a customer, not a fan, you know, and likely so. They're selling you products, their supplements, their clothing, their routines,
it's marketing.
Yeah, it's great. So like, I think that it's funny when I see people say, oh, my fans. I'm like, this is just feeding some delusional ego of yours. Because in reality, they're not fans, in my opinion. I mean, unless you're, you know, Tom Cruise, then he has fans.
Yeah. And there's this constant competition for more followers, right? And
I wish they would just delete all the accounts of followers and only you would know who your followers are. I think Instagram is actually getting that. They're doing like my likes went away. I can see the likes, but nobody else can. So it's weird. Like, I think they're testing a market where
wait. So what you're saying is like, it's popping up on
I can click on it and see it as how many people,
but it's not actually moving the ticker.
It's not visible to you how many people like my photo.
Oh, interesting.
And they're testing it with different people. You can, if you go on there and you look at different groups, you'll see like, oh, this person's photo had it, this one's didn't the next time. And
no shit.
It's interesting. Yeah, they're doing a test market because I think they want to get away with all the likes.
Yeah, I don't have it. I mean, I don't play very, very strong. I don't have a very strong profile on Instagram. So,
but actually, I think the days of like millions of followers, I think actually companies and businesses want micro influencers. We don't have to go. This is a deep social media conversation, but I think people that are doing better and actually making money from social media nowadays are, besides the big names, are the micro influencers that maybe have 15,000 people, but their engagement is like
super high.
Yeah, 70%, 50%.
Yeah, they call like whatever 1,000 true fans, right? If you know, versus a million fans,
that have maybe 0.5% engagement.
Yeah.
So I mean, and like the people obviously like the 4 million people or whatever that have 2% engagement. Well, that's probably pretty good for 4 million people. But if you have 10,000 people and you have 2% engagement, that's not really high. So I think that it just depends on these micro influencers. I think they're driving the market, or that there's a new opportunity for that niche.
So
we digress, but
yes, but no. Let's go back to kind of the world of bodybuilding and the things that are there. Yeah. So it's bodybuilding, physique. I mean, the things evolved at a massive level in the last 10 to 15 years. I mean, if you went back 20 years, it was bodybuilding. That's what it was. And there was
two different classes.
Yeah. And then there was the natural side of things that hung around for a little bit, and that one fizzled out.
Or went to its own.
That went away. But then they try to meld the two different types of physiques, right? And now that's what you have. You have this massive amount of classes out there, right? There's classic physique, there's fitness and women's, and
there's the women's physique, classic physique, two different types of bodybuilding, and then you have all the pro. It's bikini, or it's fitness, bikini, bodybuilding on the women's side.
Bodybuilding had gone away, right? And then I think they're trying to bring it back. And then there's this other one's like some kind of sport thing. Basically, it's for, I don't know. I think it's trying to honor the more. I don't know. So, but I think they're trying to honor the more like athletic build, right? Yes. Versus the bikini build body. It's the more athletic build. It's the athlete that, you know, played a power sport or whatever, that's got, you know, that isn't proportioned like a bikini, like your traditional Hawaiian tropic bikini model that has some muscle on her, you know, anymore. The thing has just gotten kind of wild, right?
And it's like a way, I'm using this word way too much, but oversaturate them. I mean, you see these smaller shows
business.
that have like
It's
hundreds and 50 women like lined about the door to do this.
I can't do it. I went to one
like,
a couple of years ago, had a gal that we were really supporting, is a good friend of ours. And we went, and, you know, she was ultra disappointed. I was like, she's the fucking winner. Like, and of course I'm biased, but I'm looking at it going, she's fit, man. She's in shape. She's nope. You know, like, and go back to the politics, right? And all the other
your coaches.
Well, what did you do to get there?
Right. How long have you been doing this?
Right.
Like the Ryan Terry.
Yes.
We could go into that, but like, you know, one of the best midsection torsos, I think, ever personally, me personally, I do. And you know, he had to earn his
right. So you got to stay in, the game for a long time. Right. And, you know, again, this we'll maybe talk about the culture. The culture is really different than it was. I mean, I think if we went back, I mean, we were kind of talking about this earlier. You go way back. Obviously, it wasn't as saturated. It was a little bit. It was a lot more obscure, if you will.
Well, it used to be freaks.
Yes,
right?
freaks.
In the 70s and 60s, people thought you were like you had an issue.
Well, it got like that again. I mean, when you start to see the thing grow, then it was like, who can get the biggest, blockiest? Who can get just? I mean,
it's interesting. Yeah, I think there's like a
get crazy.
I think there's a historical perspective because, and I don't mean to digress, but I think when things got too like pretty for men, like, I mean, people don't really realize like in the 60s and stuff, when poses, like guys had accessories that they were posing with, and it became a little bit homoerotic in some regards. And so I think that when Joe Weider came in, he wanted to show a side of like, this is a manly thing.
It's the masculine
like
side.
They limited like the type of like bikini or thong, or no more thongs that could be worn. It had to be a Speedo type of thing. And so he changed all that to create a little bit more of a masculine look to it. And then when that still didn't work, other than Arnold and some guys, and they were still questioning the sexuality of people, then that's when it turned into the mutants. And not to be rude, but like the big freaks that like that look no more like the Arnold Schwarzenegger. Like Arnold wouldn't even win today. If Arnold's old body would have not won in a men's bodybuilding show.
Yeah, I mean, you put him in the classic category.
Yeah, he would have been classic. Yeah, to compete with like those guys.
Yeah, but I mean, the drugs,
and obviously the drugs,
the workout,
improved, and
everything's improved.
Yeah, nutrition, supplementation,
everything's improved. It's evolved. I mean, there's been a ton of innovation. There's technology. There's all kinds of stuff. But like,
does that mean necessarily you have to look like that though?
I don't know. Like I don't have an answer for that.
Bigger, better.
Yeah, but I was a part of that. I mean, I was at the Olympia. It was the last Olympia with Yates and Coleman, and I mean, those were the days. I mean, there were some dudes out there then. Marcus Rule was still in the game. Like, I mean, it's Canadian. He'd come down, just be like, what is that? Like,
what is that?
Like, it was crazy. Yeah. And by the way, Jay Cutler was only like 22 years old at the time. And then just looking at him walking around the expo or whatever, going, how does a fucking 22-year-old kid look like that? And then look what he went on to do.
Yeah.
The whole point of that was it got pretty freaky there for a while. And even still, if you walk in, you look on stage, I think it is a bit more aesthetic than it was. But we're going through like these ebbs and flows. It kind of goes back and forth. And the athletes really evolve the sport, right? They kind of decide, but then at the same time, let's go back. There's the politics and the judging.
The politics that determine that.
And the judges say who wins and who doesn't, and you don't know what they're looking for this show versus last show. And as you mentioned, there's 100 shows with 150 people, and they might be looking at different things. I think the industry's trying to get their arms back around that a little bit.
Arnold called him out a little bit on stuff. Like, I mean, he's adamantly spoken out about, I'm not telling anything new, but like about, you know, this is turning into a freak show and like this needs to be kind of brought in and reined in. I mean, he's been very vocal about it, even at his own shows. Yeah. So I just think it's interesting. Yeah. Cause I think the days of like, even when if people would have seen Arnold today, they would have been like, oh man, that's an amazing body. And it's kind of achievable. Today now, like you look at these big dudes that are like, you know, their thighs are bigger than my waist or bigger. Like that's not physically achievable for anybody. So I think that you kind of lose, it's almost going back in time. Like people are like, oh, that's a freak. Well, kind of like what they thought back then, you know,
it gives people an opportunity with different classes and things. It gives people an opportunity to actually get in the game and compete without having to take it to that level. Right. To a certain extent. But again,
there's some delusion between that because like
there is a lot.
Like physique came out originally to be board shorts, beach look, right? Now they're just smaller bodybuilders that are fucking shredded as hell. That
they look crazy,
right?
Yeah,
and a lot of them pre-competition are big fuckers.
Yeah,
so that's not.
They're just
like,
not as big,
right? And they're wearing board shorts.
Yeah,
cool. And then classic is pretty much bodybuilding.
It's basically it was a lower weight class, is what you're looking at.
Yeah, and then you look at the dudes that are in classic; they're bodybuilders, just wearing square cuts.
Yep.
So I don't.
They just haven't reached that level,
right? And things are more
Craziness.
proportional and more aesthetic, if you want to call it that. But I just think it's funny that people use the term aesthetic and they got like blown out shoulders and like I'm like aesthetic is.
It's all so eye of the beholder, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
I guess it is. Yeah.
So I mean, you're kind of touching on some truths, behind all of this. I mean, what are some of the ugly truths on the back end of kind of the fitness model thing? I mean, you've kind of talked about, look, if you're going to be on the cover, you probably use some drugs, right?
Sure.
You're not natural. Let's just put it that way, right?
So
that's part of it. I don't think that's a big surprise for most people. I think at this point, people kind of get it. Most do, not everybody. Again, that's something you have to learn when you.
And then what determines what drug use is, right?
I mean,
some people say I'm on SARMs. That's not
right.
I'm like, well,
if you're competing at an Olympic level, it is
right.
I
guess it just depends on what your take is on that.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, again, there's been a lot of innovation, so there's a lot to that. I guess without getting too far off track here, I mean, to make any money in that game, like, and I think it's you set a goal. I wanted to do this. I want to wind up in this magazine, but the reality of it is you're handling it like a business. I don't see a lot of people doing that in the industry. I see them handling it as this is my shot, right? It's very cutthroat. It's very keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And it's almost I'll do whatever I got to do to make it to the next level, which ultimately is very short-lived anyway. What's some of the shit that's going on behind the scenes that people may be surprised to hear?
I mean, I think the amount of drama, is unnecessary, but I don't know how much people know it. I think that, the trash talking, the backstabbing, I think that's all common. I don't think people realize, bodybuilding for the most part does not pay. There is some people that make a living, like Jay Cutler and those guys have done very well. Other people have had branded things. I mean, hell, Steve Cook, he wasn't a bodybuilder, classic physique, done very well with his own lines of clothing in partnership with Gymshark and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. But like the average dude that's competing and even places,
it's a labor of love. And that's all it is.
How does he make a living? So,
because you got to be in the gym all the time. You got to be, when you're not there, you're eating. And if you're not doing those two things, you're trying to recover and maybe make a living.
Right. So I think that most people don't realize is like, I mean, we can kind of go into the subject if you want to, but like, the historical start of bodybuilding was a lot funded and promoted by gay men.
Yeah, this was a real challenge for me to understand when I first got it. When I was 22, 23 years old, I dabbled in the bodybuilding thing. I went down to Gold's. I trained, right? I got approached a lot. And I was like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, wait, getting handed cards, like, like, hey, we do this photo shoot, whatever, guys dragging you, hey, let me, I work for this magazine, let me take your pictures. That kind of stuff's going, what the fuck is going on here? Like, it didn't dawn on me. And then I started to get in with the guys that were a little deeper in the industry.
Yeah, I think people don't really realize that back in the 70s, I mean, there's an anthropologist, you can study it, like looked at bodybuilding and bodybuilders, and like 50 to 80% of bodybuilders back then who were professional bodybuilders were doing what we would call nowadays escorting and gay for pay. Mm-hmm. And I think that I'm not trying to like cause drama or anything, but I think that that's a real side that still exists to this day. I think that people, it's the homophobia that is the elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about. I think that it's kind of like, we just don't talk about it. We don't say anything, so these guys are profiting from gay men, having gay clients, having gay followers, but then
especially now with the social media piece.
And bashing them. Oh, no homo, no, all this stuff, So I think it's kind of funny that people haven't really embraced how bodybuilding got to where it is now. And it's a lot because of gay guys that sponsored, funded, and paid for all these pro bodybuilders to be who they are now.
To where they're at.
And like even some of the magazine editor, I mean, there was a magazine that, photography and editors of that were gay and promoted, bodybuilding. I mean, if you think about it, a bunch of dudes wearing a thong, oiling each other up, it's pretty homoerotic, if you want to call it that. So it's just funny that there's so much stereotypes about like, no, bro, I'm not gay. Or like still to this day, even in 2021, almost now we're in 2022, like we still have these harsh, like anti-gay things, but they don't realize that they're taking money behind the scenes.
Particularly with like again, going with the social media thing with this OnlyFans, the prospect of that, I mean, it works both ways. I mean, there's the female end and the male end. And yeah, I mean,
I think for somehow it's like socially acceptable for females. I don't know why. And I don't know much about this. So maybe I'm talking out of my ass, but like, I think for females to be sexualized a little bit, I think that that's like somehow okay. But if a guy does it, it's like, bro, you're gay. Or
yeah, I don't know if it's okay, but it's been normalized.
Yeah.
Right. It's definitely, I don't know if it's okay to do that, but I think it's been normalized to the point where it's been accepted. Right. Like, it's like, it's fine.
Yeah.
Like,
but it's interesting because this is a whole nother subject, but like this whole new, like alpha male, like, that has come out like, oh yeah, bro, back to the days of like all this like ancestral alpha male shit, which is cool. But a lot of the guys that are doing this are posing on stage, doing kind of homoerotic things, taking money from gay dudes and calling themselves straight. I don't judge. I have no whatever box. I don't believe in boxes, but like calling yourself whatever you want to call yourself and then bashing the industry, that the community that paid for them to get where they're at. I just think it's a little bit completely like,
well, it's not unlike,
much less alone.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you. I mean, I don't have a lot of connection to it anymore at all, but I don't think it's unlike a lot of other sports, right?
Sure.
In that, particularly, I mean, if you think about it, like National Football League, the National Hockey League, Major League Baseball, these are just not things that are being talked about.
Yeah, but I think that the fans don't have direct contact with those people, where I think in bodybuilding
that's exactly what I was just going to say.
Sorry.
Because they're being paid by the organization, right?
They're making millions.
So it pays to be quiet, right?
Right. Status quo.
Right. It pays to be quiet.
But like bodybuilders they have instant contact with their fans. They're putting out collaborations with other dudes. And there's this whole weird, I think it's weird because it's, to me, and I don't mean it's weird because what they're doing, it's weird because they're not just honest about it. Like there's one thing to be like, hey, is it Bob Paris? Like he was one of the first gay guys that came out about, I think Bob Paris. Yeah. He was one of the first openly gay professional bodybuilders. And so it's like he was honest, but like you have all this like weird backhanded shit that's going on and then people denying it. And I'm like, nobody fucking cares.
Yeah. That's, I think the bigger thing for me is like, what are you worried about? If you're not being paid by a sponsor who's going to cancel you because you don't have a sponsor or whatever else, like what's the big deal? It's more status or, whatever. I don't know.
I think it's still the industry. I think that the industry has determined that it's super conservative, but everybody's trying to like live in this conservative environment, and conservative, I mean by like traditional, but everybody's like not, they're playing along with it, but then they need money and the almighty dollar talks. So they're escorting, they're doing their videos, they're doing, it's like we don't need to name names, but there's been professional bodybuilders that got caught doing gay porn and then kind of never got to be first
they were done.
winner.
They were blacklisted.
Yeah, they're kind of blacklisted. It was just kind of like, sure, that maybe not morally or ethical, whatever you want to call it, in whatever religions you believe.
But come on, let's hold on a second, man. These are the same guys that are doing the gay for pay, to quote you, going back. And I know this because I was actually had a pretty close relationship with somebody who was very much on the inside of this, was dating a physician when that physician wanted to date, because that is how that person got the things they needed for their protocol. Right. But
there's a lot of that. There's a lot of like long-term relationships.
In terms of the moral stuff, like, I don't know if that's moral or not. I'm just saying, like, you're going back to, like you're gonna bash people for doing this, but then you're
I think you're a hypocrite.
You're
To be honest,
doing
I think it's completely hypocrisy.
I don't disagree with you.
I stand up and I speak about it. I mean, if I see people bashing their fans or followers for like commenting on an underwear photo that they put on Instagram, I'm like, bro, like if you're going to put a fucking photo of you in your underwear showing half of your shit and a guy wants to comment and a girl comments, don't bash the dude.
Yeah, that's the double standard.
Yeah, because I know behind the scenes, I know for a fact you're taking money from dudes to do jerk off videos. Let's just be real.
On the OnlyFans or whatever.
Yeah, or even privately, they send videos to and they don't think it's going to get out. And
that's crazy.
So it's the dark kind of world. I don't think that people fully understand. Sure, drugs involved, but I think that being said, I mean, there are people that literally search out people. Like when I got a cover of a magazine, I was approached because the same guy approaches every person that's been on a cover of a magazine. And I mean, it was like a contract, like $30K a month type of deal.
Wow.
And I know the people that took the deal because they were flying to LA for photo shoots that never ever were seen. Right. Never saw the photos.
Shoots.
And so like they're funding their big ass houses in Tennessee and other places. And so I just think it's very interesting that, like, obviously I didn't take the money. Maybe a bad decision, but I'm just thinking like, but you know, like it just is a real thing. And I don't think people really realize. I think they wonder, and the reality is no, it's out there. I just think that we should be more honest about it.
I agree because what you see is you have people that are like holding that game of comparison, you know, and setting those goals about where I want to be and what I want to do. You need to understand do you really?
Yeah.
Do you really want to be there? Because this can come along with it. Unless you understand it going in, right? Or you're smart enough.
And to be honest, I didn't.
But I'm going to go back to this. But you're a sharp guy, right? And so again, you understand politics, right? And you understood business.
I picked where I wanted to go.
You had some influences, and you did more than that. You decided this is what you were going to do, and you handled it like a business from the get-go. And with the barrier of entry being as low as it is to do it directly through a place like Instagram or wherever, TikTok or whatever it is, people that are doing now, I think it's a dangerous landscape. And
I think people are actually.
I think more people need to talk about it, man. So.
Yeah, and I think people are also, like you said, I don't think like people take it like a business. I think you're right. I think people are like, oh, I'm a good looking dude, I'm built, or I'm a pretty girl, and they think that just people will naturally like, oh yeah, come on, dude. Right. Yeah, I'll put you in a mag. Like, I'm like, no, you have to build a brand.
Yeah.
And you are your brand. And whatever you say has to be consistent, just like a company. So I just think it's interesting that there's a lot of naivete involved, I think maybe, or people just dreaming of thinking that people are just going to naturally help them out. And I'm like, no, it's a super saturated market.
Yeah. And I think there are people out there doing a really good job of this, Matt. I mean, I have a close female friend who does an amazing job on Instagram and is very conscious about what she puts on and what she doesn't put, what she puts on there and what she doesn't put on there. Amazing physique, very sharp, very smart, has amazing content. And she's very, very conscious about, like, if I put a picture of me wearing something provocative or in this particular way that doesn't make sense, like, which is, I'm only putting it out there to get, more followers or likes or whatever it is. I know that my followers, and some of those being fans, would drop me in a heartbeat, right? Because they would lose respect for me right away for doing that, knowing that I crossed the line.
Right. And I think that depends on what your brand is.
That's exactly right.
So, I mean, I put out sometimes, I guess you could say, revealing photos from a photo shoot, but it's also that's part of like it's not like
it's part of your brand though.
It's part of my brand, like to just be me. Like if I want to sit in a bathtub in the middle of nowhere in the nature and put it out there and talk about something funny or joking, that I'll do that. Like I don't care.
But you'll also sit here and talk about it, right?
But then I'll be honest about it and say like it's not a thirsty post. Now there are people that do purposeful thirsty type posts, as you want to call it, and then deny it, like, oh no. And I'm like, no, I just put a fun photo out. Sure. I mean, but I respond to everybody. I don't bash anybody that comments like, ooh, daddy, or all these weird, like goofy ass comments that people put out there, and I'll just be like,
I can't even imagine,
like, you're just like, okay, cool. Or whatever. Like, thank you so much for your support is what I say. It's not like you just treat it like a professional.
And you expect that you're going to get that. You don't get riled up about it.
I'm just like, it's part of the nature of the beast.
Yeah. It's crazy. So what are you doing with this right now? Like, I mean, what are you doing with the fitness model aspect? And what are you doing now? Because the way I understand it is, you'll always probably be involved in this, right? In this side of things. I mean, you have a talent for it. You have a brand now. When we talk about followers and things, you're 40,000 plus followers. It's nothing to snub your nose at. I mean, there's a lot of people out there.
70, thank you.
Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Is that what it is? I mean, sorry, man. Like,
no, it's fine.
I
don't care.
The point of that is like, you've worked hard to build your brand, right? And you've got that going now. Where does it go from here? What do you do with it?
Interesting, because COVID happened, right? So like I was on a whirlwind of like, oh yeah, I knew what I was gonna do. Photo shoot here. I had this idea to pitch, all this stuff, and then all of a sudden, fucking COVID hit.
Right. It challenged the industry big time, particularly going back to like the physique shows and like all that shit got shut down.
Yeah, the zombie apocalypse happened and everybody got weird. And so I literally like was doing a photo shoot in December, and in March, that was my last shoot with Per Bernal, one of the great legends. Shot there. Was so pumped to get it like done. They had agreed to do it. And all of a sudden the magazine shut down, fell apart. And then, so yeah, I mean, I guess the goal, or what I'm going back to doing, is I want to do another photo shoot. I have one. I'm trying to prep for it, figure out what I want to do with it. I want to do a couple more features. I'm getting older. So this is a real thing, right? I mean, yeah, I mean, it's part of the,
you've been doing it a long time.
Yeah. So, I mean, I want to do probably one or two more, tell a little bit more, some of the story stuff that I want to feature. And then I think I might want to segue into something else in the fitness industry, stuff that I didn't mention. After I left Arnold, I kind of went deep into the fitness industry, not in fitness modeling, but I'd helped design sports supplements. I worked for several brands. I designed C4 with 3 buddies. So people don't really know that, but like the fastest growing pre-workout in history.
Me and
3
C4,
dudes. Yeah. So me and 3 other people with Cellucor, used to be Woodbolt. Now it's Nutrabolt. But yeah, Doss Cunningham, the CEO, and me and 2 other guys.
I didn't know that.
I had a little looked like little drug packets that I would mix and
this is how it often starts.
Sample at friggin' 24-hour fitness in Parkmore. And like people be like, what the hell is this? And I'm like passing out dime bags, like saying, here, try this,
I had no idea.
So like, yeah. So I would like to probably get into some type of
venture there.
Yeah, venture there. I don't know what fully it entails. I have some ideas. Yeah. So I think I want to do that. And then just, actually, I want to get more into kind of doing a TED style talk, like, not really doing fitness per se, but like, mind goals and mind setting and believing in yourself and stuff that Arnold taught me and stuff that I've learned throughout my life and how I've applied it in my life to becoming reality, and visualization. And I'm a big visualization person. If I dream it, if I visualize it, see it, I bring it to fruition. And I think that that's actually really true in life. I think so. I would like to do those types of talks and, either through corporations or whatever. So yeah, I think that's kind of where I'm going.
That's cool. No, I love that. I mean, one thing's for sure. I mean, you proved it at this point, whatever you set your mind to, you're going to do.
Yeah.
And man, I do think there is a huge space for that now and in the future, that meaning helping people to get inside their own heads in a different way. I mean, because it seems we've talked a lot about social media, like trying to always, what it seems like people are just trying to live somebody else's vision, or somebody else's goals, oh, they did this, so I'm going to do that or whatever. And I love the aspirational stuff. I really do. I think there's people that do a really good job at it, but I also think a lot of it's bullshit. And there's a lot of great books out there to read, and there's a lot of great documentaries to watch and great podcasts to listen to. And look, there's a lot of good stuff. You have to find what works for you and what suits your needs and fulfills the things that are important for you. I guess my point of that is that's their story. What is your story, right? And have you taken the time to peel back the layers of the onion to understand what to really, really understand what your story is and what you want to make it, and then what has to happen. So again, man, I think there's a huge amount of space for that. And like you are a good storyteller. So I think that's a good way that's a good place to start.
No, I think that also this viral social media is like the viral video or the people that do the stunts, like it creates not authentic because people then are, oh, I'm going to do that.
Oh, it's shiny and bright, and
Right.
it's
And
like
I think
very distracting.
it's super, to be honest, it's super annoying because like, I'm like, no, I'm so tired of all the stunts. I'm like, can we just get back to like normal posts? Because I personally I don't ever like them. I think they're corny. Personally, maybe I'm an older demographic, but like the guys that are doing the goofy ass gym videos, or the guys doing the flips constantly, or the videos that
Literally and
they
figuratively.
they mimic like other people's sounds. I'm just like, super original,
Right.
but like people, it blows up. So clearly people like it. So I
Yeah.
guess I kind of question like, okay, this is the direction of social media. Maybe
For now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's
For
interesting.
now, I would like to, I always try to give hope and have hope in humanity, and think they'll come around on things like this, but I don't know. So yeah, so you mentioned the COVID thing, it's a little break. You have some goals you'd still like to fulfill there. What are you doing right now, man? Can you talk about what you're doing right now?
So I do have a full-time job besides my fitness. So yeah, I work for the government. Again, I kind of went full circle, went back into the federal government. So I work for a national laboratory, and we work for the Department of Energy and do national nuclear security stuff. So that's what we do.
So, I mean, can you talk about that stuff?
Just certain limit, but the rest is classified.
So, all right, so there'd be like G-Men outside if we went any further. Oh, that doesn't actually surprise me at all. But I mean, maybe from a high level perspective, are you basically using the same type of skill set that you've used in the past, through your political and sort of governmental career?
Yeah, it's an executive protocol officer for the lab. So I basically am like the welcome committee for our customers. So I basically showcase our lab and our features of our lab, and basically connect our customers with their programs that we're working on, and tell that story better and help sell the lab, I guess. So
how do you get a job like that?
Well, that's interesting. I think based on my previous experience, there was an opening and opportunity, and they saw my background, and then kind of
Just connections.
Yeah, we just connected on it.
Man, I mean, again, so important to build those relationships. I mean, you mentioned that early on.
I think I've every job I've ever had is through a connection. I mean, maybe this past one I actually like applied for it, but it was because I had done the job in the past that I got the opportunity. Plus, I had a clearance in the background, in the
that's helpful.
Clearance, so it's helpful. So yeah, I think every job I've ever had has come through a connection.
Well, I haven't heard at any point, and maybe I don't know. You're an honest, upfront, sort of genuine dude. I'd imagine you would have said something if it had been any different. Doesn't sound like you burned a bridge before.
No, I mean, I think there's lessons learned. I think when I was younger, I was a little bit of a spitfire and a little bit like, very, like goal-oriented type A, bulldozing ahead. They used to call me the bulldog, actually, at the governor's office. I was very like set in what, this is what I want to do.
Yep.
And I think later in life, I've learned that, well, I worked in tech for about 10 years for C-level executives. And so like for Larry Ellis and Mark Hurd and all these guys. So like, I think that through that, I learned, okay, I don't got to just naturally say this and it's done. Right.
Yeah, there's
there's a lot of like convincing and collaborating, we like to call it. And so I think I've learned to have soft approaches to certain things to then have your end goal happen and not just bulldoze your way through.
More skills that I think people could be working on right now.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it was tough early on. Like I said, starting out where I did as with the president, I mean, I'd go to a military base, a 4-star general would greet me and say, Matt, whatever you want to do. And I was like a 22-year-old kid. So like, I think that didn't set me up maybe per se for the safest like collaboration later in life. Cause I would just be like, oh yeah, we're going to do this. We're going to do this. We're going to do this. Okay. Makes it happen. So I think that's kind of interesting. I didn't have to learn those. Those are some of the skills I actually didn't learn until later in life.
So while this question is going to be obviously a matter of personal opinion,
sure.
and that's what this is. I mean, we're having a conversation here, but if I had to ask you, and you at some level are an expert on this, right?
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
I need a drink.
You've had plenty of experience in giving advice, taking advice, and having to collaborate with others to lead a team, to provide, to build brands and present messaging and messages that are in a way getting people on board or feeling compelling people to come on board with whatever that message or that brand is, and very particularly in a governmental role. If you had an opportunity right now to walk into a situation with our current leadership as a country, right?
We're getting political
with their skills.
Okay.
And I think, yeah, I mean, obviously it's a matter of politics,
Right.
so it gets political. But what advice would you give the staff, right? And I mean the collective staff, in terms of the messaging that's coming out of our collective leadership? And I mean that on both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
And I mean that at both the city, state,
I was going to ask
and
you.
federal level, because the way I see it, and this is my professional expert opinion, the whole thing is fucked.
Right.
I mean, this is the worst example. I don't think you could have presented a worse example than what we're seeing in terms of people not being able to come together and provide a very clear, consistent, empathetic, and organized message that gets people to rally together to solve problems. Right. And we have a lot of fucking problems, more problems than we probably ever had, that people don't want to admit to, that we've got. And it's at every level. It's permeated every single level what I've just mentioned, in every level of society. So if you could go to the top, right, of these different places and just say, hey, dude, like, or guys, if you could just do this would be a great start to challenging the status quo, at bringing people together so that we can come together instead of trying to divide.
Yeah. Tough question. I think the message that I would give is different for each level. So I think if you start at like a local city level, it's not the same message that I would give the president.
Great answer.
So the president cannot be necessarily, it's an institution. I don't think people really realize this. Since you asked me, I'll share a little bit. The presidency is not a human. If I want to be honest, it's a office. The president of the United States is a office. It's a constitutional office. It's not Joe Biden. It's not Donald Trump. It's not George W. Bush. They are humans that occupy that office, but there is a certain level of, I guess, candor, mannerisms, respect, and communication style that office should have. Because the president speaks, and that determines safety, security for our country. It can annihilate relationships and allies overnight like that. So I think there's a lot of water you have to tread very carefully. So I would give advice differently to that versus like our local mayor, Sam Liccardo. Right. So I would give Liccardo, who he actually, I've seen him a bunch of the gyms. I would give him a different statement. I would say, be honest in the sense of just be transparent.
Yeah.
I would say, share your true feelings in the sense of, hey, you're concerned too. It's scary. We don't know what's going on. I'm doing the best we can. We have a problem with homelessness, or we have a problem with our small businesses collapsing, or whatever you want to talk about. I would say, look, it's bothersome to me. I would just be very open and honest, not speaking from like a teleprompter type of a thing. And I would go into like, hey, and I would probably convince his communications team to write things that are more authentic and less scripted and more from his voice. I don't know if they're doing that. I don't know him personally, so I can't speak to that. I would definitely encourage him to do that. I think at a state level, I think we need a clean house, to be very honest. I think, our state representatives and our national representatives to our state, our senators and our the House representatives, I think that needs to be. I appreciate and respect our forefathers that established the institution that we have. I think it's been taken advantage of. I think that a lot of Americans don't actually realize. I worked in Capitol Hill. I worked for a congressman. It's a completely entitled system and they have healthcare that we're never going to have as citizens. Like, they have an amazing healthcare. They have pensions after serving only a couple of years. There's stuff that that people don't really realize that I think. So what I would tell them is that drop all your fucking egos. I think the people that we need new blood in there. I think we actually need we've lost patriotism for self-interest. And I think that there's a balance, right? This country was founded on high treason. We really want to go there. On the 4th of July, I toast to high treason because people don't really, and people look at me weird and I'm like, no, like our forefathers, you know this, left a tyrant, a king, to come here, risk their lives that I don't think people would do nowadays, and start a country for the betterment of their own.
And then fought for it.
And then fought the hell for it.
Laid their lives down for it.
Right. And so I think that, and that like even gives me goosebumps to think about, like, because it's like, we don't have that. Now, entrepreneurship has always been in our country, and starting your own, and, you know, we don't have socialism, medicine. We don't have any of that stuff because it's like built on you doing it for yourself. But there is a limit to then self-interest and then earning it yourself. And I think we're turning into like self-interest of, hey, you're not supporting my bill, I'm going to screw you. And it's just, it's very, there's no gray area anymore. The world is turning into black and white. And in reality, the world's not black and white. But in our
nuanced, right?
Right. In our politics, they have become very black and white. And so I would encourage or tell, I guess, those leaders to drop the fucking egos, give up on your little, I got to get this through
personal agendas,
and come together. And you actually might find that they'd accomplish a hell of a lot more. And then to the president, whoever that is, Joe Biden, whoever, if I'm giving advice to the specific president currently sitting in office, I would tell his people to, first of all, I would fire his communications team. Secondly, I would get him a speech coach, because, and I'm not trying to bash him. I think actually one-on-one without a prompter, he's actually a hell of a lot better. I think he comes off as more authentic and real. And I know that, like, when I worked for the vice president, he suffered from this too. He was very scripted, like, and Cheney was like a very funny guy, had a kind of a dry sense of humor, was very funny, but on camera, he was a statesman supporting the president, had no opinions, support. And I think that that's kind of what we're dealing with now. It's this he's reading from a screen. He doesn't prepare for it. I would definitely encourage him to prepare. So I think there's a little bit of a different thing. I would definitely tell him to still be himself, but he can't say certain things that he's saying just because it then replicates through the media. It makes us look weaker. Just like, I mean, Trump even had those same things.
Yeah. I mean, it's no difference between the two.
It's no different. I mean, it's a matter of, I guess, putting aside your personal agendas and speaking as the leader of
the free world. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that people lost touch of
who that person is and who that person is.
And we don't, I mean, and I'm not some like crazy person, but like the days of Ronald Reagan and the days of like even Herbert Walker Bush, 41, like those people like came together. I mean, Democrat, Republicans still, they hang out afterwards. Like these people don't.
They would just as soon kill one another.
Yeah. And I think that that's a little bit, that's problematic for not just them, but for our country.
Oh, it's 1000% problematic for all of us.
Yeah, I mean, and to be honest, people don't really realize politics is a business. I hate to say that. Maybe it wasn't built that way, but it is now. And so I think that we've even lost touch of that. Like it used to be a business. Now it's like some like personal, like crazy, like cult.
Yeah. And when people
each organization,
when people go to the polls, it's like they're voting for their new corporate boss.
Right.
To run the corporation.
Yeah. And I think it's like even extremism, like they're like believing, every word and every nuance. And I'm like
time out.
Yeah. I'm like, it's a little scary. So I probably do that. I mean, I hope that answered
No, I think you did a great job there, man. It was a very loaded.
It's a tough,
very, very large question. But again, you were kind of right there on the front lines and saw how certain actors, in our history,
have lost touch. I guess the big thing is I think people have lost touch of history and the institutions they hold. I should say that. I think that as President 43 said to us in a staff meeting one day, he said, the day that you don't get goosebumps walking in the West Wing is the day you need to leave. And he says, that's including me. He wore a blazer, and I'm not trying to promote George W. Bush, but he wore a blazer every day he walked in that, even on weekends, because he said he respected the people that held the office before him. And I think that that's what's been lost. I think when you don't realize that you're walking in history and what that responsibility is, I think is the day that you need to go.
Yeah, that's the personal part. That should be the personal part, not the personal agenda, but more of I have a personal responsibility
for this office, whatever it may be, a mayor to the president of the United States.
I don't think there would probably be a lot of people that would argue with that statement, man. I mean, I certainly wouldn't. I would hope that, just like if you're walking in to the office of, company X that you've been working for 20 years or whatever, and you've just had nothing but, leaders that have walked in to try to do the right thing
Right.
by the company, by the people, by the customers the entire time. God, they're going to make mistakes. I mean, things are going to happen. They're going to get hit in the side of the head a few times, just like anybody else. But going back to your being honest and upfront and transparent and being human about it and going, fuck, what harm would there be? And this is a big question
Right.
for me, and I don't expect you to have an answer for, but what harm would there be in just going, you know what, we messed up. And we know we messed up. Here's where we messed up. And we realize that and we recognize that. And we want to make it better. And we don't have all the answers right now, but we are going to work night and day to do the best we can given the resources that we have. And we recognize change needs to happen. And we're going to go to the people, right? And listen to them more and ask them for what changes they think, not the people that are in between, which is the people that you're saying, like, we need, like, in our state level, like, that's fucking, they got to go. Yeah. Right. But like, we're going to go to the people, we're going to put that back in the hands of the people. I don't think that the majority of this country, right?
I agree with you.
This state, this city would have a problem with that statement. I really don't. I think it would set them back in their seats a little bit, and they'd be like, oh shit, well, that's never happened before. And it would be the start of a new beginning. But that's not likely. I'm not holding my breath. And, I think you handled the question really well, man. It is a matter of both self-respect and respect for the position that you hold in the people.
I think the problem also is Americans. It's on us.
Oh, dude. This is one of my favorite
you want to blame all of our electeds, but you elect them. So like
we encourage what we tolerate, man.
Right. So I think that there's a lost, I don't know if it's a lost like patriotism or I don't know. I think people, you can ask people like historical information about our country.
They have no idea.
And they're Americans and they have no idea. And I'm like, it's kind of problem. I don't know if it starts at a educational level. I'm not trying to blame anybody, but I'm like, I don't really know where the fallout happened or where we lost touch with like our country as a whole. And like, it's innate in us. I don't know. It's kind of a scary question.
I think there's a generational thing there. I think there's probably a 10-year period where a good amount of that eroded. I won't comment further than that, but what I can tell you is my version of U.S. history was much different than my parents' version, my mom's version, or even my dad. My mom and dad are 8 years apart, so my mom's version of U.S. history was different than my dad's version of U.S. history, and and a good amount of my U.S. history was obviously very different than theirs, and a large part of the supplemental history lessons that I ever got were from my parents. And I think that's where the challenge is that those things generationally are not being passed down in a way that they're being they're not being passed down and they're not being retained. I think it has a lot to do with it. So I do think it starts with the kids, but you can't say, well, it just starts with the kids. We need to do a better job with them because it really starts with the people that are teaching the kids. And that starts with the parents. And that also means the teachers, and that means the administrators, and that means the politicians that are controlling what's going on in those positions, which is all very problematic. I without going too far down in the rabbit hole, politicians shouldn't have anything to do with our state education system. You need to get them out. That's Republicans and Democrats alike. They should not have anything to do with that. There should be a different deal in my mind because it just muddies the waters. But going back, my point being is my parents supplemented my U.S. history because they were proud of that history and they took the time to learn about it and pass it down to me and my brother. So I think I have, and this is a frustration I have when I'm having conversations like this with folks is if you don't understand kind of history, right? Then it's really hard to understand how we got to where we are and why things are happening. And I'm not a history expert, but I know some stuff. And if I don't know it, I'm going to go out and look for the answer. And I know where to go, and it isn't fucking Instagram, and it's certainly not Fox News or CNN or wherever else. I'm not going there.
Those are opinions.
Yeah, at the end of the day. And so I didn't get those from my parents. I got, these were the facts. This is what happened, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And now what I'm starting to see is it seems like our politicians never got that message.
Or it's been
just
diluted.
been lost. Yeah. So, man, there's a lot there. Sorry. I mean,
we went down the rabbit hole.
We did go the rabbit hole. I appreciate you going there with me. I do. Kind of wrapping this thing up here, man. I open this up with you're a fascinating dude, and there's a lot, people probably or may not know about you. There's a lot there that I didn't know. A lot of the detail. And I just want to thank you for sharing all that. There's been I'm going to walk away from this being blown away and just kind of replaying. I can't wait to listen to this thing, kind of come full circle with all the things that you just mentioned. I mean, at this point in your life, all the things that you've been able to do, all the influence that you've had literally are the people living in this lifetime, if they're living in the state of California or the United States of America in the last 20 years have been somewhat influenced by the things that you've done.
Well, right? Sure. I have a small part in it.
Yeah, you did.
Small part in history.
You absolutely 100% did, man. And that's fascinating to me. So my hat's off to you. I appreciate that contribution that you've had.
Oh, thank you.
And your contribution to today, because this has been a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, I think that, thanks for having me on, first of all. But I guess one of the things I decided a long time ago is, and I think I told you this before we started this, but you can't take money with you. Obviously money helps, especially in this state,
sure.
But I wanted to have really amazing life experiences. That kind of was my goal in life, to have, go to my deathbed with a lot of good stories and memories. And I, continue to do that. But I think that that's what life's about. I think it's, relationships and building them and having unique, crazy memories. And I'm proud that I kind of went that direction.
Yeah, man. I love that you're sharing those and allowing people to hear them, and you do a really good job with sharing. And so, just kind of closing here, if people want to hear more of those stories or find out more about you, reach out to you, get in touch with you, where do they go, man? Where's the best way to find out about Matt?
Yeah, that's a good question. The best thing is I'm on Instagram. I think that's my biggest. I have a Facebook page. I push it out stuff, but I think Instagram is probably my biggest thing. So it's just Matt Greene Fitness. On Instagram. And I think I'm really active on there. I respond to most everybody. It takes a little while, but I've been always big I respond to everyone. That's my thing. So a lot of people I see don't ever respond to people. And I'm like, well, what's the point of turning on the comments if you're not going to respond? Or, so I'm a big believer in that. We're all human beings. I always say we're human beings. I said, we're actually, the saying I say is we're spiritual beings going through a human journey. So I like that statement. So, I believe in validating people and responding to people. And so, Instagram, Matt Greene Fitness.
Well, one last time, thanks for sharing your journey to this point. I'm, again, I appreciate you, and I'm looking forward to kind of seeing where the journey takes you from here, man.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Best of luck to you.
All righty.
Thanks.